All right.
Indeed. So, thanks for jumping on so quickly. Feels like we've come apart somehow.
Yeah, but in a difficult way to define. It's like we both know kind of what we're doing, but yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, like so. What bewilders me is why the written documents that I see from you include so much to do about different company structures, when I think the goal is to get the liquidity pooling up in as minimal a form as we possibly can, because that's the mechanism by which all else follows.
Right. That first point is easy to deal with, and we agree on the goal. The one thing I need to clarify in this conversation is precisely when we're talking about state chart, what's the object of which the states are the thing that we're modelling? So that's my question, because I think there's a dissonance there as well. But the first one, you can't see my screen. I'm going to go into Miro.
I think the state chart models the state of every single actor NFT pair.
Right. Okay. So, let me deal with the first one. Barry, when you're saying you're talking about organizations and company structures and so on, I think you're referring to the Miro board and the three horizontal boxes, green, amber, and red. Is that what you're referring to?
That plus the sheet 2 in the securities matrix.
Okay.
That you sent.
Which
I've got to say, like, sheet one was brilliant. Like, that's an amazing way to think about the whole sort of problem space.
Yeah.
Sheet 2 is a follow-on or an expansion of that.
Yeah.
The disconnect feels like that's great, but we only need to check all that enough to know that what we're planning to launch with is outside of all of those checks. And the purpose being that, for me, the big mental shift was realizing that there is this thing called an investment promise or an investment class of promise, and all the securities regulation around the world is there to regulate investment promises to varying degrees with varying concessions and all sorts of things. And so my attitude now, which is fresh as of 2-3 days ago, is that we should not concern ourselves with any of that regulation. We should instead concern ourselves with truly obliterating the ability to make any kind of investment promise in our platform, because that is the most wholesome goal that we can try and get. And then all of this regulation doesn't even apply anyway.
Yes. Okay. So we're on the same page on that one. Can I just would like to 2 points. So about 2 minutes ago, you were talking about why are you talking about companies? I said, are you talking about Miro? And he said, no, also the matrix. So the first one on Miro is I put those boxes around as a kind of conceptual guide, not as part of the state machine. So you notice there's no actual state changes. These are just chunks, and it's like if you're in this is the sort of thing you could organization you could have.
Even so, the way that it's almost like the way the arrows were drawn and the actions in between those different steps wasn't what I was looking for. And this is the part I'm sort of struggling to say why. It's because it was still coming from the view of how does it fit existing securities regulation, whereas I'm really looking for the Securities Guardian to be something that catches something even more difficult but even less rules or simpler, which is investment promises. of any kind.
Right, gotcha. All right. So the first thing I'd say is on the Miro, let's deprecate Miro. That the flowchart did, or the state chart did in Miro. Let's deprecate that because that doesn't do what you just asked for.
Right.
So
well, I guess it's a sequencing thing because I'm like, after we get the gold standard up, where it's so far on the side of not a security that you can't even, it's not even worth having a debate, then we can start painting the line with more resolution and comparison to specific jurisdictional regulations like what you've got there.
Right.
I'm just desperate to get us up and running, and I really don't care if we take an axe to 90% of the investment pool that we could capture if we spent more time refining now.
Yep.
Like, let's just get the 10% now. Let's take 10% now instead of 100% later.
For sure.
And
fucking 1% would do it.
Chuck it in there.
Right. So the next question. So let's deprecate Miro. The state chart in Miro. That's actually, it was. I'll keep that in my back pocket because it was quite a useful exercise, and there's probably value I'm going to extract in that. And
I think it's very valuable. It's very valuable.
But just answering the wrong question. Yeah. So, but the next follow-up question.
Correctly answering the question. It's not even the wrong question. Correctly answering the last question in the test. Right, yes. Without the, right. I want the first. I want the first question.
Well, last night when I was thinking about this, and I was reading through your responses on Discord, I was thinking, well, actually, and I'm not suggesting this, by the way. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but just very briefly, that Miro board is closer to actually the assessment that the having triggered an event saying, are you promoting this?
Yeah. That's like that's the workflow where we would assess behaviors that occurred outside of the dream catcher that caused it to become an investment promise.
Right, precisely.
I think that's what you've made there.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a very simple but annoying guardian that's just like clamp, like you can't.
Right.
And they're like, oh, but in some circumstances this, and maybe it could be that. And I'm like, the fact that if you say the word maybe, then we're going to clamp on the side of it's a security. Like that's the
right,
that's
exactly.
the attitude.
Right. Okay. Good.
Because what became apparent to me was that if you genuinely go out there with hand on heart, honestly trying to not make any investment promises, you actually have to do some genuine work. And you can earn money and you can offer things that can attract royalties, but it's actually, you have to work hard and you have to participate as an investor as well. And that's actually what we want. So let's have that.
It's there's two things that strike me when went through this. The first one is you as I say, you really need to be part of the team if you're going to avoid securities.
Yeah.
And the second thing is you really need to be humble in terms of who you speak to. You can't go out saying, "Oh, this is going to be this new flavor of ice cream is going to be best." You need to be
you need to be deadly honest, and you're probably best to shut your face.
Exactly. Well, it's more than honest, because honest is an opinion which could, in retrospect, bite you. Really, what you want to do is to downplay the entire thing and saying, no, this Dreamcatcher is shit, isn't it? It's not going to work. However, we'll still do some work on it. We'll see. Those two words, we'll see, I think, is is the summary of how to avoid securities.
And what I actually want is I want us to be administering that workflow like you've drawn to actually slap people on the wrist with it. Like this is not an anonymous platform. This is a company, and you are part of our company. You can start your own one and use our tools, but go get your own money and go get your own software base to start from.
And get your own
lawyers, If you're going to work in our pools, you are going to be KYC'd, and when you go on Twitter and talk up the Dreamcatcher, we're going to ban you. We're going to take your money out of the pools and we're going to kick you out of the Dreamcatcher. So shut the fuck up and get on with your work.
It's bizarre, but it's true. Right, okay, good. So that's the first point. I'm aware of time. I've got all the time in the world because I've just started the day. But how about you? It's 9 p.m. where you are.
I believe
Yeah.
I have 30 minutes, I believe. I may have as many as 45 minutes.
Okay.
But
Well,
anytime that Henry, if there's a
exactly.
issue,
If CEO Harry wants to step in at any point and stop it, we can. So, apologies if I feel like it feels like I'm pushing through these points, but I will because
we should. I'm totally okay with that.
cool. Right. I'm referring now to the sheet 2 on the securities matrix thing, and about 10 minutes ago, you were talking about there's companies and organizations referred to in here. I don't. There isn't. So, what was the thought there, or were you actually talking about the Miro board? I've not talked about any organizations, any PLCs or anything like that in this board. So it's just ignores whatever organizations.
Which panel was that in?
I'll just ping you. It'll be quicker. 2 seconds.
I got it.
You got it? Because this was almost like version 2. So the Miro is like, get my head around it. This version 2, it's actually a lot easier to do state charts in a matrix, and they are logically equivalent, so you can flip between them whenever you want. Anyway, that's well you know. But it's just easier to do as a matrix. Oh, there you go. Right. I would let me trace through one set of state changes which speaks to the securities thing.
You are completely right. There is no reference to any type of company in sheet 2.
Yeah, I think you're conflating with the Miro on this one, but so I'm on E6. Yeah. And okay, so the state is we've got an initial idea, and what I'm doing here is tracing through the trigger thing that I was talking about. So we've got the initial idea, and governance goes out and says we've got this idea, and we're going to go to the moon. Aroo!
Now, are we talking about idea with a capital I, or idea?
This is yeah, very good point, because this was written actually before we changed the terminology. No, this is in terms of, say, the security guardians. This was when you were thinking actually we need a security guardian, but hadn't importantly written a forward NFA for it.
Right. Can we sort out then the language discrepancy? I don't mind much what we call it,
Yeah.
but there is a distinct difference between the statement of the problem and the statement of the plan to solve the problem. And
Yes, I'll do that today.
We're going to call the thing.
Yeah. So governance promotes an initial idea. We go to state 98, which is there's 98 states. Security law check. I'm now on B23. And that's
where's S98?
Sorry, say again.
What does S98 mean?
State 98 is just a unique numbering for the states.
So you just pick that out of thin air, like it's just.
Oh yeah, it's arbitrary. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay, so that wouldn't be. That wouldn't be so arbitrary. I need it described as when you say state 98, I would have called that in those 3 phases that I'd written for the web liquidity pooling idea. I would call state 98 as the speculative phase.
Yes, there's. You see that grey strip on row 26? There's phase changes between these. The reason I'm using just SNN is because actually when I was writing this, it's much like putting books into a library. There are states that need to go in between other states, and so the numbers actually are are just unique. That's it. There's no implied stuff there. But you're right. There's phases here, and one phase change. And I've not completed this at all. One phase changes on row 26, which is why that grey bar is there.
Okay,
I'll make that clear.
With this sheet 2 thing, are you trying to map out what the Guardian looks like for the minimal version of the web liquidity pooling?
That's the end aim. What I'm doing with this sheet is because it's not hard. It's not that hard to map out. I mean, this was only 4 hours work. What I'm aiming to do is to map out all the transitions between the states so that we know something goes from an initial concept all the way through to an asset, an NFA at the end. And by doing that, putting in what happens if you promote at this point, or what happens if this actor promotes at this point. Now, what
so like the available transitions would be promotes publicly,
right?
Stating return on investment.
Precisely.
Promotes publicly and then there's a whole bunch of different there's like several ways that you can promote it publicly. One of them will transition you out of the safe zone in the Guardian.
Precisely. But in order to get that in a way that I was confident with, what I want to do is to map the entire state sequence of going from initial concept all the way through to an asset. And I say it actually was much easier than it sounds.
Okay, so the columns represent the actors.
Yes, correct.
And the actors, when they're in certain states, like a hybrid contributor versus a enslaved contributor versus a free contributor.
Right, and there's a question mark in my head about whether actually that differentiation matters, but I thought I'll put it in there because I don't want to assume it does, and it doesn't, and actually does. And also I
think it matters a huge amount. That's the critical difference.
That's my gut. And also interesting, I've put in services, QA service, ESCO service, and arbiter, and I've also put in the automation. So the Dreamcatcher system itself is an actor.
So escrow is an automated service. Okay, but you've marked it. I guess it's useful to mark it as an actor. Anyway, I don't know how we model that because it's not. The thing is, as a person, you can be in any one of these states that you described. You can be a contributor and investor. Maybe,
no.
Like, you can't be QA at the same time or something like that.
No, yes, yes, but no, but this was my fourth on our list of the stuff we were talking about right at the start. It's the fourth thing I wanted to make sure we nailed. Just for clarity, this state state matrix, the object that it's tracking is the NFA, not the actors. So it could be that governance is also a contributor.
So it's describing the state of the NFA.
Right. So I've just nailed just the NFA. And when we're talking about the state changes, it's the NFA that's moving state, not the actors. The actors are. This is why there's so many columns. Perhaps one actual person is in more than one of these. It doesn't really matter. But when they're making an action on a state, they're acting with that hat on, as it were. Yeah. But it's important to highlight, and also highlight this is the states of a single NFA, not a system of NFAs, or it's nothing bigger than that. It's just one NFA, one conceptual NFA. or
Right,
hybrid.
and so instead of doing NFA active pairs, you've done NFA to all possible actors.
Yes, one NFA to all possible actors, and the state changes that are possible between those, and the state changes
Right,
refer
so
only to the NFA. Yeah.
all the transitions. Okay, so how do you model a state change that depends on more than one actor doing something, like an investor puts money into the system while at the same time a contributor promotes it and promises a return?
Yeah, I've kind of fudged that slightly. I started off thinking,
Are we just going to say that it's infectious?
yes, well, you notice that there's more in column B. There's more states than really there should be. So I fudged it I put it into serial. But some of these serial state changes actually only make sense if we're talking about two people colluding, for example.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
like you kind of, the chart needs to be built out later to be able to actually demonstrate collusion,
Yeah.
because it's not like,
Yeah. Sorry, UML2, as you know, on the state chart definition can have parallel and can have history, which would do it.
yeah.
But this was a bit of a quick and dirty. Let's get it up, and I just did it by creating additional states. The other thing I would say, importantly, and maybe this is I should have said this right up front. This is a stepping stone onto what's actually going to be produced. The thing that's going to be produced has got to be smaller than that. I don't need to map the entire system. The reason I've done all the state changes from concept all the way through to asset is so that I don't miss anything. It's for my benefit. So there's going to be a contraction of this because we don't need to know,
Right, because I get what you're trying to do. I don't know how to program something for this thing. So if the thing that you produce at the end is more compact than this, is it going to be a state chart?
Oh, yes.
What will it be?
My aim is to produce a UML 2.0 state chart. I don't know, I can do other types, but that seems a pretty decent way of doing it. Can you...
Sounds close enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's various flavors, but I know UML, so why not? Instead of hunting and pecking around for something different. But that's the aim. So, for example, the thing that the next one, and working with matrices is so much easier than working with those silly little grab hands and Miro and all the arrows. You've got to figure out what the routing of the arrow is visually, and it's like, sorry, I can't really be arsed. So the matrix is a much better one for me to work on. So the end state will be, across the top will be the actors, a complete list of all the actors. The vertical will be a complete list of all the states in terms of whether there's a trigger that says you're now possible. This is an important point. We're not giving you legal advice. However, in our super, Nazi style of you can't be doing anything that could be a security in our pool, we're going to flag that. And whatever action is taken afterwards, whether they get thrown out or whether they get warned or whatever, that's separate from that one. So this matrix, or the next matrix, is going to be the trigger events. So, for example, if you are a contributor and therefore a participant, an active participant, an AP in securities law, if you're a contributor and you send a message to another contributor saying, "I think this thing's going to go to the moon," that's fine, absolutely fine. If you are a contributor and then you tweet out, "This thing's going to go to the moon," that's not fine. Especially if you've got wording like, "Hey, retail investors, come and invest." If you are a contributor, that includes governance, that goes to a sophisticated investor and say this thing's going to the moon, you'd better be sure of your orbital dynamics, your fuel consumption, etc., because the reporting is quite high. So it's that level that I think we need to get at. Now, the thing that I'm not going to do, just to make clear, is try and get into any kind of legal assessment, because I'm not a lawyer. But what I can do is write a state chart that's a red flag.
Why do we need this before launch?
That was an interesting question you asked on Discord. I went down this route because you wrote the Securities Guardian's forward NFA. And it's just like, well, that's really interesting. Okay. And
I wrote that because it felt like I'd finally glimpsed how to keep the Dreamcatcher secure in the eyes of regulators by ultra protection of our participants from themselves and from others, and that it would take much time to develop and be sure about the Guardian.
right.
But I did not
And it's a
think that it
minefield
needed
as well.
to be. Sorry?
It's a minefield as well. Because the Securities Guardian, as you wrote it out, I was looking at it, really has embedded in code kind of legal advice, which is like,
It's right, but that's one of its property that it gives you. That's why it's valuable. It's that because it's been legally audited, you can join the Dreamcatcher and be like, I am safe. Or you can run your project and be like, I don't need to go see a lawyer. I don't need to get legal advice. The legal advice is over here.
I mean, right there, that's like an 8 or 9 figure, value NFA. But it's like, could we write that right now? It's like,
I guess the reason why I created the artwork and laid out the NFA and all that was because I'd glimpsed how we can be superior to the existing securities framework by quite some way and still operate. In fact, thrive.
That'd be awesome. I mean, imagine, forward-looking 5 years from now, whatever, Securities Guardian's in place, and you get kind of red flag up because someone on your team has been doing something that actually in the future the securities guys could look at and saying, actually, that's promotion. So you need to deal with it. That's like fucking gold dust. That's how to stay out of jail. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Genius. But it's really hard.
What I hope you could be able to do with it is actually apply it against other companies external to Dreamcatcher and be like, look, it's basically just a securities checker in general.
Yeah.
And provided you filled in the data correctly, you are under securities law. All these tokens and all these all this crazy shit. Like, it depends on what you're doing. That's what makes it a security.
Yeah, it's absolutely genius, and it's probably an 8-figure idea. However, your question was what we're trying to do here, and when you put that in Discord, I was thinking about it. Actually, really, what we're trying to do is to get money in the door and not go to jail.
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
So actually,
so we can do that. We can do that right now from private investors and staying small enough that, like, it's not worth the court case fees to come and check it out.
Security through obscurity. But yeah, I get your point.
Well,
I get your point.
But you know what I mean? Like, because otherwise we're going to sit here for how long, right? Like, solving this problem is incredibly valuable. No one solved it. We can't put this as a blocker. It can't be a blocker. What we can do is agree amongst ourselves that actually we strive to make it impossible to make an investment promise between anyone. So,
and with which scope?
Are we happy with that?
With which scope? So we're talking about inside of the pool of investment that we're planning on building. And everyone
in
else
our
is like,
pools,
whatever you do. And we can also advertise saying, this is what we're doing, and we are comfortable and sleep nicely at night. You guys want to use this, then that's fine. We've got attribution to deal with that. So yeah, this scope-wise, that was my conclusion. It sounds like you're thinking along the same lines. Really, the practical point in hand is how do we regulate ourselves and activity on this in such a way that we don't have to worry about securities and we can like lock that down. And because it's a small number of people, it's not a problem. We can do manually, effectively. It's a paper exercise.
And we can, debate about, hey, I think this is a security. Like, we can run the Guardian manually, and we can sort of message people and be like, look, mate, I think you've stepped across the line here, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
However, what you're doing makes us uncomfortable, and we're the pool admins. Fuck off. Like,
yeah.
Right, like pool admin can kick for no reason, right? That's just, it's their pool. You play by their rules. So at the start, I guess, we are pool admin, and we also block the creation of other pools. So if, like, it's small enough for us to manage, and we're not taking on any dodgy people or unknown people, and we're KYCing everyone. So we are the Guardian.
Right. Precisely. And I think that's the best way to look at this. So there's two things. The first one is you've identified a really valuable problem, which we're not planning on fixing in code. The state chart is the ready reckoner that we can use manually to go through. Everyone can see it, read it, who contributes in the pool.
Yeah, I guess that's a part of what you're building here is like working towards a solution for that problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing that cropped up from all this is that when you make a request or you state a problem, the statement of an idea need not have the same name as that problem and need not be targeted at only that problem.
Okay,
right?
Yeah. See where you're going here.
Okay, and you even started trying to do that with your proposal, in that you were trying to target a subset of the Securities Guardian request.
Right.
And so the problem is, well, when problems and solutions are many to many in their relationship, and we don't have software up yet that can manage that many to many relationship. And what would it be anyway? Like, it feels like it's a bit of a melee. Like, what you're really asking for is you're asking for the Securities Guardian to be broken apart into these pieces, and then you made a proposal for just one. And based on your proposal, like, I'm not, like, it's back and forth, because I'm not sure that's what I was asking for, was really what I was saying. Turns out it was, now that I understand what you're doing in sheet 2, but it's more the mechanism by which I'm like, well, sort of, no, that's not what.
That's a really interesting point, and let me bring up your original proposal. Okay, so this is really instructive, and this is valuable stuff, because it's the first time we've tried to get like an idea proposal lock. And when I was reading through this, and I read through it with a fine-tooth comb, with a view of what can I do, what can I offer against this proposal. The detailed description was about the first one, the state chart. It's like, yeah, that's cool, and that's the one I answered. Then when we get to operate as a guardian, it's like, what would I actually do in order to do must number one, freeze any assets that enter a disallowed state. It's like I don't have any
Yeah,
control over that.
right. So that's actually a collaboration. You need someone who can interact with the code of the Dreamcatcher to be able to hook the state chart up.
Right. So in terms of this is going to be a recurring, not problem, recurring trope.
This is the piston. This is the combustion chamber.
Right.
This is where you get Dreamlock.
Yeah.
This is where you try to fit things together. Whoops, 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 whoops. Oh, Dreamlock, money, escrow. Right. This is actually the machine. This is all this other stuff is all just fancy shit.
Exactly.
But the combustion chamber is where it's all at.
Exactly. It was fascinating to go through this as a real proposal and do it as, I'm only responding over text. Absolutely fascinating.
I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
So
it still made me feel like I'd done something, right? So now that I've put that Guardian request out there, I feel like, that's a good description of a good problem.
Yeah.
And it feels like, even if it's not what we use or do, that still feels like an asset to me.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it's like,
this will be something we'll come back to maybe in a couple of years for the full thing as you described.
Yeah.
But
and so I guess the thing that also got me pumped about it was being able to put the pictures to it like that. That's what the AI thing spat out. And for some reason, the pictures make it feel so much more like a covetous thing that I want in my collector's box. I
was deeply dubious about that. You remember 2 calls ago I said either that's completely stupid or you genius. And then later you had a proposal that you sent up and you just put it up saying, have a look at this. And it's like, I really want that.
You want it.
I don't know why. It's like I really want my name next to that. This, the spider, whatever it is, it's hourglass or something. I don't know what it is, but it's like freaky.
The only one is when I want it, and I want it real bad. And then when you start to read about it and understand its potential, you want it like so much more than just a blob of text.
I know.
It becomes a person or a thing or an entity. It's covetous. It's like an object of desire.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about gamification because people run on emotions as well as intellect. We're not all computers.
Imagine if we built that Securities Guardian and it had that image as its card and it had all this history and all that and it was earning money, and then someone put it up for sale, right? And you're like playing that card, or you're like trying to trade with someone else for someone else's.
I know, but
pretty pictures that you also want, and you're like, oh.
The thing is, are
these the same?
If we go down this rabbit hole for just a wee bit because it's a lot of fun, and as I said, I'm a great fan of gamification. For God's sake, I spent the first 10 years of my life writing games. When I was looking at this, it's like the state chart one. It's like but if I get the state chart one and I own a part of the overall Security Guardians one, it's like, okay, all right. So there's, and it's not rational. It's totally not rational because it doesn't actually change anything that's happening. But there's a desire thing here.
Is it though? Like it sort of focuses you more.
Yeah.
It makes you recognize the value more because you see it as a rarity or a thing, and then it made me feel like I wanted to pay some money to get someone to fill in the bits that I couldn't do so that I could have a piece of the complete card, because I'm like, man, I can't get this all, but
I saw
it was a bit of trading.
It just took me right back, and oh god, this is going back in the UK. It was called Panini cards. And they were those cards. I'm sure you got them. That you buy. They're well overpriced, and you get like 5 cards in a little sealed pack, and then some of the duplicates, and then you trade the duplicates. No, the trading cards, a bit like Magic the Gathering.
Literally billions of dollars that go through the trading card market. Like there's something in human nature that makes that a thing.
I want the biggest stack, because when you have the biggest stack in the playground, you've got kudos, right? You've got status. You've got, yeah. Look at my stack. How big's your stack? Well, keep working on it. Anyway, that's an aside, but yeah, I'm totally bought into the whole emotions around the whole trading card thing. It totally threw me when you first brought it up, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing that for? Honestly, I have no idea. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but over the last 2 calls, it's like, oh yeah. I want that dark hourglass thingy.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, I want a piece of that. Right, so, but in terms of the process that we've gone through, so you put down the proposal for 04 Securities Guardian. And what I did was, I've got a certain set of skills and access as well. So I think, well, and that was a very sharp scalpel to bring to the game here. Because what I had to do is, can I affect, can I influence, can I do anything on each line of this, or can I simply do it and then offer it up as something I would do? So I think this is going to be a recurring thing. When you put up a proposal, someone's going to come there and saying, well, you've got this proposal for, Security Guardian. I can do state charts. I'm a ninja state chart guy, say. But I don't have access to the code, so I don't have any influence over the automation of it. So you got operate synchronously with no external calls. That's actually an example of give you a reference. I'm now in state chart, all allowed and disallowed states. Oh, shut up. Must number 3. It's like, I can write a state chart that does that, but in order to fully realize that particular point, which is a must, then I need someone else to come in and actually say, okay, right, with this state chart, you can do this. Now,
so what you would come back to me with is, we would start negotiating, you and I, on how to break this apart to be better aligned with the skill set grouping.
Right, exactly.
I mean, as you know, right, like a blank bit of paper is a fucking nightmare to get something right. But, putting a straw man out, and people come back and be like, well, I think there's nothing there. And that's the combustion chamber. That's how the requests become well formed. And then once you've got, the idea is that by the time it gets to QA, once you've got Dreamlock, QA's job should be radically easier if you've got 2 opposing parties that have been at each other, got Dreamlock, and then they're like it's already going to be better than just one guy being like, is this a good thing to ask for?
Right, exactly. So what you put up there is a description of a thing. In its entirety, in its complete description. I've come at it with a guy with skills that can partially can push the peanut on, to use a old term. I can partially offer to do some of this, and do it in a way that allows others to do the rest. However, there's also interaction with whoever's coming to do, in this case you, to do the code, and to make sure that's correct. And so there's a cycle there. So
yeah. Like, you probably wouldn't do it. I mean, you could do it in isolation, but then there's part 2. You would almost be the first guy that the software people would want to talk to as a partner on completing number 2. Right.
And here's an interesting thing. I feel in writing that proposal, I've tightened up the thinking about how this should be apportioned, and the scalpel. I think I should get attribution for
the
that.
Segmentation.
Yeah.
The segmentation.
Yeah. So putting in a proposal.
You think you should get attribution for the approval of the request?
Yeah. Precisely. Because it took it effectively took a day to respond to
this thing. It takes a lot of time, dude. Holy shit, does it take a lot of time.
Right.
But I mean, so one of the launch shortcuts that we're taking is that we don't record attribution. We only record contribution.
I think we need to do it at that point because we really don't have a tight idea of what attribution actually is.
So your effect on the request with your idea would be recorded as contribution. I know it's valuable, you know it's valuable. How do we apply a formula that figures that out? I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have one. So that's basically a launch shortcut, is that it's all one way, like it's all just intake in the engine right now.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this about 8 months ago. We've been complete cowards about attribution because it's a big gnarly thing, and it's like, and we can responsibly leave that for now. But the record of the data is the important thing.
Okay, so just to be explicit, do you agree that we can launch without the Securities Guardian?
Yes, and last call you're saying, can we define a Securities Guardian that means that it's entirely outside of securities law? I reiterate, yes. From that matrix, it's a number of triggers that say someone needs to look at that. Either it's an AI or an automated decision tree or a person. Doesn't really matter. But from that matrix, I'm very confident that we can get a number of triggers for that. And for launch, we could just print that out and then amongst ourselves all agree we're going to watch ourselves on this.
We can just put it, commit it to the repo as like, well, this is the rule chart that we're following. We have not automated it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
The gatekeeper, which is the person who does the KYC and all that, is an active participant in these pools. And I think that's okay. Like, we're just a different class of active participant, and we're sort of like, you know, our mandate is just to maintain an orderly ventures marketplace. It's not to really get involved in anything else. So long as we stick to all that, I think we're good. So,
yep.
What are we missing for launch?
For launch, the four of us need to have a DPL that we can actually sign up to. I mean, honestly sign up to. The DPL is there and it's complete to an extent, but it's not contract and it's not had any kind of scrutiny. Because that's what we're going to work on. Assuming that we're not going to do just, you know, we're all mates and we trust each other. So we need that. We need the process around going from initial concept through idea, proposal. The big thing is like, I don't know what the format of the contract is. The contract log, it's always said there's a contract. We've not really looked at what that is and what that means. So, for example, when I put in the proposal, I just made up that format. It's like, you notice at the bottom, I put up, it's under DPL and it's arbitrary, it's attribution. That was a very weak answer for that one. So, and I'm only talking about from my side, not from your side. You know, I'm sure you've got an adequate list of stuff you need. But what I need to do,
I'm just trying to write it down now. Can you tell me again? You need a DPL version that we can sign up to.
Yeah. So tracing through, we need to be able to go through the entire path. So the idea, yeah, fine, that's good. We got like a negotiation, an informal negotiation, and so on. We're going to record a contribution. Done. Contract lock. Contract lock is, you remember the hierarchical thing is I'm doing this under DPL, you're doing this under DPL, and here's the details of the contract. And we haven't figured out what the format of that contract is. What's the offer? So say if you turned around and said, you know, that proposal for the Securities Guardian is great. Go and spend 2 weeks of your life or whatever it is.
we might not need DPL for the workers. Because it's code, man. Like, what do we need to even talk to you about? We need KYC if you're gonna take money out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if it's code, like, you need the DPL for people like the gatekeeper and people like the ones who are running the software nodes on the Dreamcatcher, because they could actually circumvent the system. Yeah. So you need legal contracts there, but I'm not entirely sure that you need DPL just to do some work on the system.
No, because remember, DPL is you can choose not to do.
We can put it in there. Okay, so the fact that we can even debate it means not required for launch, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So basically, we need a DPL version that we can sign up to, so that people are safe with us providing the core services.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'll ask you another question, which is that if we did not sign those contracts and simply said only people who are ballsy enough to trust us can come in, could we shorten our launch date?
Oh, yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we could just take in whichever pirates
get rid of wants to DPL.
Yeah. I mean, we've been working without a DPL for like 4 years, whatever it is, right? Yes, the DPL is something you advertise. Yeah, okay, right. So
we don't need the Guardian, the Securities Guardian for launch.
Right. So, but practically, what we do need, because we're saying that here's an interesting way of thinking about it. All we really need to do is to find a way that we absolutely nail recording of contributions. Everything else is for the benefit and for the confidence building and for the utility of it. But really...
No, I disagree with you completely. We need only to launch with the ability to blockchain the Git commits.
No,
and we just say...
That's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, if we were to put a wrapper around it...
That's right. Well, no, because if you're like saying, well, I got on a YouTube channel and I told all my followers to come and try the Streamcatcher thing, that's not a Git commit.
Oh, no. That's trivial to get around. You take the video and you put it up on a repo.
Okay, well then, so we don't need...
Yeah, so the contribution is recorded by an enforcement of law saying if it's on GitHub, it's recorded. If it's anywhere else, then, But you can put anything on GitHub.
Okay, so connecting Git. So I'm typing in the funding channel and I'm editing the list of things that we need for launch.
Yep.
Number one is the blockchain working on IPFS.
Yeah. As an aside, I've been reading far more detail about IPFS. I was vaguely aware of it. It's bollocks. It's great, isn't it?
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. When I was asking Rex Mondo, I was like, why, for the millions of dollars that we spent on R&D, why are we finding this now? And he was like, well, actually, the project was in a bit of a shit state back in the day. Anyway, but also, like, I don't think we really lost any time, because note that I'm only dealing with synchronization now. Having synchronization early wouldn't have solved all the other problems that we had to deal with. It's just lucky, but my goodness, is it a beautiful system, and it fits so perfectly with us if we design it right.
Yeah. I did a bit of a deep dive into the docs, and it's like, it's so sweet. Those guys did well.
The sweetest thing is IPLD, not IPFS. IPLD is interplanetary linked data, which is where they describe a way that you can they're like, look, anyone who uses content-based addressing is using this system. And so here's an abstraction over that so that we can actually pull in Git repos, the Bitcoin blockchain, any blockchain, and it all can be connected using the IPLD object. I'm like, wow, that's beautiful.
And your question 3 days ago about privacy, I think as long as we're upfront with it, the only privacy, assuming you endpoint encrypt, which is entirely down to the implementation side to decide whether to do it or not. The only privacy issues is in the metadata, and network analysis can get you quite far, but network analysis also gets you quite far on every other blockchain. So
yeah, and I'll filter responder again, but I'm not sure that we should be able to launch as full public.
Mm-hmm.
It saves a lot of time, and right now I'm all about time.
Yeah.
So, obviously, it's things like, we can just do some manual work in the background, like KYC checks can be off-chain, and one of the projects is to bring them on-chain, but, we need this privacy layer in there first.
Yeah, right. Right, so back to the task of this numbered list.
Yeah, what do we need for one?
So what I'm interested in is being able to go through from flash to bang all the way through, and each of the steps are very least recording contribution. And if we're defining contribution as if it's not a git commit, it's not contribution. That seems a reasonable initial stance, but need to be able to go through the process of going from a concept to an idea to proposal to a project, which we've kind of left fallow for a while what we're doing with projects. But there needs to be some kind of object there on day one where actually, okay, so who am I talking to? Am I talking to Discord? Am I talking to...
We're going to have to launch without projects.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
Yeah, right. I know, because we're like, whoa, why do we, to get the pooling system up, we do not need projects.
To get money in, you mean?
Yeah.
To spend the money, we kind of need projects. It could be a stripped down thing.
Well, yeah, but in that sense, you're just calling the pools projects. All the pools need to do is they need to be able to record when the Git commits came in. They need to keep track of where the money's gone, and they need to keep track of these NFAs that are being formed within them. That's a very hobbled version of project. A lot of the parts of project that we discussed involve the communication and negotiation between the parties. We're saying that that's going to have to be done off-chain. Sorry.
In that case, and this is actually actively giving me pain to say, the minimal project is governance.
No, not even that.
Well, without governance, how can
you? Governance, as defined in the dictionary, is not that's higher or more advanced than the permissioning level that we need here. Permissioning level here is don't let anyone but me write to the pool admin site. Don't let anyone but it's
no. That is governance. That is governance. Governance is that's a governance algorithm.
No, governance was a modular system by which algorithms could be put together to decide how governance works. This is just straight up permissions. Governance was a mini program, right?
It was, yes.
That was very adaptable. To get this thing off the ground, we need only permissions. That's absolutely not governance. There's no voting, right? There's no voting here.
Can I offer a middle ground then? Because that's Actually painful. Actually painful.
Are you gonna build the middle ground? Like, why do we need to be in the middle? Why can't we just be there?
Hey man, I'm trying to step towards what you're saying there.
Why don't you come all the way?
Governance then needs, I would say, if it's off chain, if it's you and I going, yep, fine, needs a place to record the decision and the question. So someone's putting in a PR.
Oh yeah.
We need, because otherwise it's like there's nothing there. If we were to state, even in clear text, right, you can't commit to this unless you've got two of the editors say, yep, you're fine. And that fine can be anything. Or
what do you mean? You mean you can't make a git commit until the governance says you're okay?
Well, take a pull request.
Yeah.
Who's signing off on the pull request?
The dictators, the pool admin says that's what. It's dictatorial.
Yes.
We don't need any kind of democracy.
No. Here. I'm not saying. I'm totally disinterested in the actual governance algo, but dictator algo is one of the ones we've defined. Interesting enough. It's the recording of the result. It's like at this time, you submitted, actor X submitted this PR, and it was agreed by Y and Z, who have authority here.
Just heads up, I'm gonna have to go in 7 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't need that at all. There's pool admin. Pool admin can be one person, and when pool admin controls master branch on GitHub, when pool admin says this is merged, it is merged. The mechanism that needs to be in there is QA approving the fund release. But master branch, pool master is in charge of master branch. They say whatever they want.
Okay, all right, okay. So we could devolve that to say the record of the decision is on GitHub, right? So at any point you can look back and saying who. Well, you don't have to say who.
Whenever you do commits, who made the commit is always going to be interrogatable from there. So who merged? It's like pool master merged. That's who.
Right, and the fact that it's merged means that the permissions have been agreed to. Okay.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, it's right down to the wick, isn't it? And
right into the stuff, man, and that's where it should be.
Yeah, and QA, yes, that's an excellent point.
The QA is simply a check, like yes or no. Does QA agree to this? All that fancy shit about partial attribution and partway along at launch time, all we got to do is say either QA passed it or QA didn't pass it. There's no in between. Okay, like when you look at how Ethereum runs inside those contracts that are worth billions, they are little babies' toys. Right? They can't do any of this advanced shit.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to either to be able to launch and put our hands out and say, look, here's the basic system. It's already several light years ahead of all the other shit you've got. Put your money here and let's build this thing out. Okay? That's the system. That is the working, functioning Dreamcatcher. It's not, it needs more stuff. It's that it's working when it can build more stuff to make itself better. That's the point of the Dreamcatcher.
Right.
And the minimum is well within our reach, but we need to let go of all this fancy shit.
Okay. I'll argue against that only partially because you've now only got about 3 minutes. I think there's. You remember that Firefly game that we built in the Pinker and Skunk Works? If we could tabletop manually that process all the way through, I'd be content.
Okay. And if it's exactly how I laid it out, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Like yeah, okay. So basically, what you're saying is you want to be able to comprehend the entire system in your head, play with it, watch it move, all that,
Right.
And then you'll be comfortable to say go, right?
Right. And maybe some of
Okay.
those
So
manual
why
steps
don't
are cool, but doesn't matter.
we'll start building it because like that's probably the easiest way to even get that. Like, if you want to make a game, fine. But for me, it's faster to just sort of stay focused on the blockchain and then build the blockchain bit on top of it and be like, this is how it works. And then when you're like, shouldn't it do this or that? Then I'm like, well, sure.
Yeah. And from my side, from the manual side, what I'd like to do, to go back to the matrix, that state matrix is, I think, a hugely powerful tool, and doesn't involve a single line of code. You can choose to pull stuff out, but we can debug quite a lot on the product level just using manual hand-cranked matrix decision trees.
I'm not very good at that. I can't see how that works. I can see how you can do it that way. To me, it's easier to make it.
Yeah, for me, it's just how my brain works.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's my bag.
Basically, what we're saying is that point number 5. Point number 5 is going to be we're all happy with it.
Yeah, but I think we got locked there, but just to make sure I didn't misread that. So what I'm saying is I'll be happy if, regardless of any code or any system, we've got a state chart that we can run through manually and make judgment calls as people that have rules against it, and it makes sense, and you can actually take the thing from start to end. And then from the code side, you can pick and choose. Actually, well, that would be much faster to do if we had that in code, or I've already got that in code, or whatever. But if from my side, if we've got that manual hand crank all the way through, then actually it would be very slow, but we could actually run Dreamcatcher.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
I think you're out of time, man.
Okay, yeah, I gotta go. So basically, you could run it on paper.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Just write bits out, pass them around, and then.
Right. And if it's, we're just assuming everyone's honest actors because it's small, we can do that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll work on that. So I'm going to continue on that state chart matrix with that goal in mind. And try and make it parsimonious. I'm not going to do anything more on the securities proposal other than embedding it inside of the wider state chart manual game.
Okay.
Is that the right thing to do?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Why don't we have a think about it and go through that list of minimalities?
All right. Yeah.
Maybe it's something we missed. I don't know.
Okay, cool. I know my gut is the right thing to do, so I just need to double check that my gut is not, spinning me porkies. You need to go, man. Right.
Okay.
That was
okay.